It is snowing and raining and freezing outside at my house here in Salt Lake City. So I wanted to share with you my favorite and most popular soup recipes. Now, you know, if you are a viewer of my channel, that I do almost every single soup in the Instant Pot. However, today we're going to start out with one that's even easier because you don't need to pressure cook it. It cooks that fast and easy that you don't need to use a pressure cooker. So we're going to start out with the absolute best egg drop soup you've ever had. This is like gonna blow anything you had at a restaurant out of the water. So let's start cooking. We're going to start out with 6 cups of water, and I have this preheated so it might bubble a little bit. This recipe is really easy because you just throw everything in a pot and let it boil. And I always do better than bouillon. If you don't use better than bouillon, you can use chicken broth, but I do recommend that you use a better quality chicken broth because that's like one of the main flavors in this soup. So you want to make sure that you're using something that tastes really good, not like a junky like powdered chicken bouillon. Try and use either a boxed bone broth or better than bouillon. Have this on high heat because we just want it to come to a boil. To this, I'm adding about a teaspoon or 2 of minced garlic and about a teaspoon or 2 of fresh grated ginger. If you don't have grated ginger, you can use powdered, but the fresh ginger really makes a huge difference, so I do recommend that you get it. I always just buy a knob of fresh, I usually try and go organic with the ginger in a knob like this, and you can peel it if you want, like just kind of peel off some of the skin either with a spoon or with your grater to the side like this. And then I just keep this whole knob of garlic frozen in my freezer and then grate it into like any and every recipe I can because it's so good. After you learn how to make this egg drop soup, you'll never buy it at the store or a restaurant. To this, I'm just adding some chopped green onions. This is about 4 stalks of them, but you can do as little or as much as you want. I just like to kind of go heavy. I usually do about half in the soup, and then I like to top each bowl with a little bit. Okay, and then to that we'll also add, I put like about 1/8 to 1/4 teaspoon of crushed red pepper flakes, depending on how spicy you like it. It doesn't give a ton of spice, but it does give some good flavor. If you like it spicier, you can always add extra. And then I also like to do some corn because it gives it a little bit of sweetness and texture. I like to do about 1 cup. And I prefer frozen corn over canned corn. It just has a much better flavor and texture. If you have like some minced chicken or minced pork, you can definitely add that in. That would be really good as well. And then I'll just do a tablespoon of soy sauce. I like to use low sodium soy sauce, but it's up to you. Okay, and then lastly, just a little bit of white pepper. If you don't have white pepper, just use a little bit of salt and pepper. So next, while we're waiting for this to boil, we are going to crack 4 eggs into I like to use just a Pyrex because it's easy to pour. Okay, so while that's going, you want to whisk up the eggs, and I like to whisk them up pretty well, but you don't want to like blend them in a blender or make them too whipped. This is almost boiling, but I wanted to give a couple pointers with this recipe. So number 1, as it is written on my website, it has a cornstarch slurry at the end, which makes it nice and thick. But if you don't want to add those carbs and calories, you can omit that. I almost never do the cornstarch myself because I'm making this all the time. I never measure anything, and I find that the thickness is perfectly fine with just the eggs. But I know most people prefer a little bit of a thicker egg drop soup, so that's why I have it written like that, and it's delicious both ways. Second is there are a couple key ingredients in this dish. So like I mentioned, make sure you start with a good quality chicken broth or something that actually tastes really good because that is one of the main flavors in this. The other thing is make sure you use a good sesame oil. So this is like the only brand of sesame oil I use. It's Kadoya and it's from Japan. So maybe I'm a little biased, but it really is like the most delicious flavor. Sesame oil, it's amazing quality. So if you can try and find this one, definitely try to get this. They come in smaller bottles too. So the thing that you definitely need, like if you don't have garlic, you can use garlic powder. If you don't have fresh ginger, you can use ginger powder. But if you don't have sesame oil, like don't even bother making this soup. If you don't have eggs, obviously don't bother making this soup because it's egg drop soup. And then I love to have fresh green onions. It makes it really fresh and like fragrant. You really need that, I think. So you could maybe get away with some freeze-dried chives or like some minced onion, but I definitely recommend trying to get green onions. So those are like my main tips. Make sure you have good quality sesame oil, a good quality chicken broth, and then the rest it's like, you know, you can do with or without it. So I mentioned earlier that I almost never make soups on the stovetop. I always use my Instant Pot. So now that it's boiling, what you wanna do is you want to drizzle in your eggs. So I turn off the heat, but for this recipe, it's kind of a waste because we turn off the heat as soon as it comes to a boil. And then I very gently just pour in the eggs in a circular pattern like this, and you don't want to stir this. Definitely don't stir it, and you'll start to see the eggs kind of flour. So I think that's why, you know, some people call it egg drop soup, some people call it egg flour soup. Oh, it's so satisfying. But if you mix it right away, it will look cloudy, and if you boil it too crazy, then it will look cloudy as well. So what you wanna do is just kind of drizzle it in like this. So the heat is off, this is done. We want to add a little bit of sesame oil, and I like to do a little bit on each bowl, but you can do it right in the pot if you're just going to serve it. So I do about a tablespoon and just drizzle it in over the top. Sesame oil is a finishing oil. It's not one that you really cook with, so you want to always add it in at the very end of cooking. Oh my gosh, that smells, oh my gosh, that smells so good. Okay, so now your egg drop soup is done. That literally took like 5 minutes to make. So what you want to do is take your ladle and kind of pull from the sides. So go in from the side here and just pull in towards the center to kind of distribute those eggs a little bit. And like I said, if you want this thicker before you add the eggs, you would add the cornstarch slurry to make it nice and, you know, a little bit thicker, but I don't miss it. Okay, oh, it's so good. It's so perfect for sick days. Whenever anyone in the family is sick, I make this for breakfast, lunch, dinner. It's like so soothing. Oh my gosh, look how freaking amazing that is. And then I like to top each bowl with a little bit of fresh green onion and a little bit of extra white pepper. And this is like out of control. Oh, so good. It smells it smells like sesame oil. It smells like just like the green onion. Oh my gosh. Brett's gonna be so happy when he finds out I make this. He's obsessed with egg drop soup. So that was my first recipe. Let's move on to the next one. We are going to start with 1 bag of potatoes O'Brien. Like, could you think of anything easier than using frozen potatoes in a potato soup? Okay, next we're going to use 8 ounces of cubed ham. I purchased mine just like this, but you can also do this recipe after Easter, Thanksgiving, Christmas, any of those holidays where you use a lot of, you know, ham and you might have some left over. We'll do 1 can of corn. So simple. Then our spices are just 1 tablespoon of minced garlic and 1 teaspoon of real salt. Just throw that in there. We've got a 1/4 cup of bacon crumbles. You can either cook and crumble this yourself, or I just use the bagged, like pre-made bacon bits just to make it easy. And then we're gonna do 2 cups of chicken broth, and I always use 2 cups of water with 2 teaspoons of Better Than Bouillon. So we'll just dump that straight over the top. And that's really it. I'm just going to mix it all together. And literally that's all you have to do. So I'm going to put the lid on my Instant Pot. Make sure that knob is set to the sealing position. And then we're gonna cook this for 3 minutes on high pressure with a quick release. And then we'll add in just a couple extra ingredients. The potato ham chowder is done. So we are just going to, vent it. And this is what it looks like. It looks and smells amazing. To this, we are just going to add 1 cup of heavy cream. If you don't want to do cream, I'm sorry. You could do half and half, you could do milk, but it just won't be quite as thick and creamy. So 1 cup of heavy cream, half a cup of sour cream. And then to that, we're just gonna add about half a cup of cheddar cheese, or however much your heart desires. Like, that one is so simple and easy. We've got potato ham chowder, so good for fall. The next soup I'm making is this amazing lazy lasagna soup. It has all of the amazing flavors of lasagna, but without all the work. So it has some crumbled sausage in there, tomatoes, pasta, spinach, and it's topped with this amazing ricotta, mozzarella, Parmesan mix. And so it just melts into the soup. It is Seriously, one of my favorites. To make our lasagna soup, first add 1 pound of cooked and cooled Italian sausage to your bag. You want to make sure it's not too hot, otherwise it can kind of melt the bag. So cook it up and let it cool, put it in the bag. To that, add 1/2 of a large onion that's been chopped up. So after you add the onion, also add a tablespoon of minced garlic, 3 teaspoons of beef bouillon. You can use better than bouillon, or you can use the powdered bouillon, which is what I'm using today. Next, add 1 14.5 ounce can of diced tomatoes and 1 24-ounce jar of your favorite spaghetti sauce. Last, we're gonna add 2 cups of dry penne noodles. I know it's weird to put in dry noodles into a freezer bag, but I promise it totally works and it's awesome. So put in 2 cups of penne noodles, and that's it. Squeeze all the air out of the bag, close it up, and it's ready to freeze. To cook our lazy lasagna soup, first add 3 cups of water to your Instant Pot, and then we're going to empty out the contents of our bag into the pot. So this is important. We want to make sure that the noodles are on the bottom of the pot because we need the noodles to be submerged in the liquid during the pressure cook stage so then they cook evenly. If your ingredients are having a tough time coming out of the bag, you can just thaw it for about 5 minutes on the counter, or you can run it under cold or warm running water for a couple minutes and it will just slide right out of the bag. Next, just put on the lid, turn the knob to sealing, and then we're going to cook this for 7 minutes on manual high pressure with a quick release. While the soup is cooking, you want to make the ricotta mixture. So in a medium-sized bowl, add 1 cup of ricotta cheese, 1 cup of fresh mozzarella cheese, and 1 cup of Parmesan cheese. Mix this all together, and this is going to be the topping that we put on each bowl of our lasagna soup, and it just melts into the soup and it's so creamy and delicious. It is amazing. Now, after your soup has released all of the pressure, open up that lid and give it a stir. You may need to break up any pieces if they are still frozen, but it's not a problem. Just break everything up and give it a stir so everything is dispersed, because we're still going to let it kind of steam and simmer for just a second because we're going to add 2 cups of fresh spinach, or you can use kale, but I like the flavor of spinach, and just mix it in and let that spinach wilt down. So I like to serve this lasagna soup with a couple dollops of that yummy ricotta mixture, and then it, like I said, it just melts down, and I like serving it with some crusty bread. It is one of my absolute favorites. For the soup, you will need 1 tablespoon of olive oil or butter, 1 large onion diced, 1 tablespoon of minced garlic, 1 bag of mini carrots, or it's about 3 cups chopped carrots, 1 whole bunch of celery, or about 5 cups, 2 to 3 fresh or frozen chicken breasts, half a cup of fresh curly parsley, 2 tablespoons of dried oregano, 1.5 tablespoons of dried basil, 2 tablespoons of tarragon, 1 bay leaf, 6 cups of chicken broth, and I just use water with the right amount of better than bouillon to reconstitute it. I think it's like 1 teaspoon for 1 cup of liquid. An additional 1/4 cup of better than bouillon, and 1 cup of heavy cream. For the homemade egg noodles, you will need 2 cups of flour, half a teaspoon of baking powder, 1/4 teaspoon of white pepper or salt is fine too, 2 large eggs, half a cup of warm water, and additional flour as necessary. It's about half a cup to 1 cup when all is said and done. To start making our Instant Pot chicken noodle soup, first press the saute button on your Instant Pot, set it to high, and then add 1 tablespoon of butter or oil, and just let that melt down. And then add your large chopped onion. I like to just let it sit and kind of sweat down until it's slightly translucent. While the onions are sweating down, this is when I like to start making my pasta dough for my homemade egg noodles. So first you need 2 cups of flour in a bowl, and then I like to make a well in the center, and then add your baking powder and white pepper or salt. Whisk this all together so we can combine all of those dry ingredients, and then make another well and add 2 large eggs and half a cup of water. Mix all these ingredients up to make a soft dough, And once it gets kind of combined, I like to move from a spatula to my hands and just kind of knead it together a little bit. You're not like kneading it like bread dough, but you want it to come together. After everything is combined into a nice ball, just cover this with some plastic wrap or a clean towel, and we'll come back to it in just a couple minutes, but we need to let it rest. So we'll go back to our soup and add the rest of our vegetables. You add your garlic, and then add your carrots and celery. Just mix this all together and let it saute for a couple minutes just to kind of get those vegetables a little bit softened. Next, add your chicken breast pieces. So here I have about 3 cups of chopped chicken breast pieces, but if you don't want to cut them up beforehand, you can just throw in 2 or 3 large pieces, like frozen or fresh. With the chicken, add about 3/4 of your fresh parsley. Next, in a small bowl, combine all of those spices together. So we have basil, oregano, tarragon, and bay leaf. Throw the bay leaf in your soup and then just mix up the rest of your spices, and then sprinkle in about half, and make sure you save the rest because we'll add those after pressure cooking. Now we'll just pour our chicken broth over all of that and then mix it all together. Place the lid on top of your Instant Pot, lock it into place, and then turn the sealing knob from venting to sealing. Now that our soup is pressure cooking, we can come back to our egg noodles. Just take that little ball dough out onto a floured surface and just give it an initial roll out. You want to kind of tap it into a round disc, however far it will roll out, but we just want to make sure this is generously floured the whole time. Dust the noodles again and then flip it over. You want to make sure that you're always flipping and flouring as much as possible to make sure nothing sticks on your work surface. Now just cover it with a clean tea towel or some plastic wrap, and we'll come back to this in 5 minutes. All right, 5 minutes later, we're going to take the tea towel off of the noodles, and that just gave time for the dough to just rest and relax so it wasn't so tight and elastic. Now you want to cut it into strips. So as you can see, I cut mine into quadrants, so I had smaller pieces that were easier to work with. And then I'm going to just take each one of those squares and then roll them out just a little bit and then cut them into long rectangles. You want to cut the noodles so they're about 1/4 of an inch thick, and they will expand while they're cooking, so don't worry if they're too little. All right, now that we have these beautiful little noodles, toss them in a bowl with, you guessed it, more flour. And then I like to just shake that bowl and kind of throw it and toss it a little bit so everything is coated in flour. Next, press the saute button to bring it back up to a boil. And we're gonna add the rest of our parsley and the rest of our dried herbs back to the soup, along with that 1/4 cup of better than bouillon, and just mix that all in. We're gonna add just a little bit more flavor into the soup. Pressure cooking the soup kind of dampens those herb flavors, so I like to add the second half after pressure cooking, so then it just like livens up that flavor a little bit and it just tastes a lot better. As soon as the soup has come back up to a boil, you can start adding your egg noodles. So just take your bowl of egg noodles from the fridge or the freezer or the counter and start sprinkling them into the soup. It's okay if the flour gets in there that is in the bowl, because that also will help thicken the soup a little bit. I like to just give this a little stir to kind of distribute the noodles into the broth, and then you only have to cook the noodles about 2 or 3 minutes. And as soon as they all float to the top and they're plump and they look good, you can usually test one to see if it's cooked all the way. You're done. So turn off your Instant Pot, and then this is my favorite part, is add a cup of heavy cream to the chicken noodle soup if you want to make it extra creamy. Oh, there's seriously nothing better than adding heavy cream to anything. It makes everything taste better. Let's get started by turning our Instant Pot to the high saute function, and then I'm going to add 3 to 5 pieces of thick cut bacon. Now, I definitely recommend using the thick cut bacon so then there's enough fat and flavor in the soup. So I have just a couple pieces of bacon that we're gonna add to our Instant Pot and crisp up. The bacon's done crisping and I just scooped it out and put it in a separate bowl. Then you should have about 1/4 cup of bacon grease in there, and that's totally fine. Just keep that in because we wanna keep that flavor and a little bit of that fat. So to this, we are going to add 1 tablespoon of minced garlic. 1 2-pound bag of hash brown potatoes, and you can use regular potatoes if you like. I've got those instructions on my website. Next, we have 2 tablespoons of onion flakes, a teaspoon of salt, and half a teaspoon of pepper. And just like the last recipe, this one's so awesome because you can pre-prepare this and use it as a freezer meal. Just put all these ingredients in a bag and prepare it from frozen, so it's really easy. Okay, mix that around for a minute. And then we're going to add 2 cups of chicken broth. I always use 2 cups of hot water with 2 teaspoons of Better Than Bouillon. Perfect. If you like, you can add a little bit of that bacon to cook in with it, but I prefer to sprinkle it on the top because I think it just kind of looks prettier, but you can also cook it in the soup as well. And that's it. We're gonna put the lid on it. We're gonna cook it for 3 minutes from frozen, and then we'll add a couple extra ingredients at the end. The loaded baked potato soup is ready to come out, so I just turned the knob from the sealing to the venting position, and this is what it looks like. Now this is the fun part. After you pressure cook the loaded potato soup, you're going to take a potato masher and just mash these potatoes up about 5 or 8 times, just to kind of break up some of those potatoes. We don't want to make mashed potatoes, so we're just going to mash it up just a little bit to still have some chunks, but not too many. To this, we are going to add 1 cup of heavy cream because heavy cream just makes everything more delicious. If you don't want to use cream, you can use milk, half and half. And then this is what makes it taste like loaded baked potato soup. It's 1 cup of sour cream. This is so good. That sour cream is really important because it makes it taste like an actual loaded baked potato and not just potato soup. And then we've got 1 cup of shredded cheddar cheese. I always add extra on top of each bowl. I like to let that kind of melt down. I also like adding some of the bacon back into the soup, but I also like having a lot of it to kind of put on top of each bowl, just because then it's really pretty. But we can put some of that in there as well. And that's it. This only cooked for 3 minutes. It used a frozen bag of potato hash browns, and it tastes like you slaved over it all day. So first, add your baggie to your bag holder. Like I said, these are so convenient. It's nice to make sure nothing tips over and spills ingredients everywhere. If you don't have them though, you can just keep your baggie in a large bowl while you're filling it, and then that will prevent anything from spilling over as well. So to your baggie, add 1 large chicken breast. This can be fresh or frozen. I just have a frozen one today. Next, add 1 can of drained corn, 1 can of black beans that are also drained and rinsed, half of a large onion that's been diced up, 1 small can of green chilies, 1 tablespoon of minced garlic, half a teaspoon of cumin, and 14 ounces of hot red enchilada sauce. I like buying the large 28-ounce can of the enchilada sauce and just making 2 freezer meals at the same time because this is a really easy freezer meal. And 1 can of diced tomatoes. And that's it for this freezer meal. Just squeeze all of the liquid out of it and close it up. And this one also does have a lot of liquid in it, so make sure to freeze it in an Instant Pot liner or a bowl, or just kind of squish it on the sides to make sure that it will fit into your Instant Pot once it's frozen. When you're ready to cook this freezer meal, add 1 cup of water to the Instant Pot and then squeeze the contents of the bag into the Instant Pot. Like I said before, if you're having a hard time getting the ingredients out, just run it under some cool or warm running water and then it will slide right out. This is going to cook for 30 minutes on high pressure with a quick release. After your chicken enchilada soup has finished cooking, take the chicken breast out of the Instant Pot and either cut, cube, or shred your chicken, just whatever your preference is in the soup. We like serving this soup with tortilla chips, extra sour cream, cheese, avocado, a squeeze of lime, just anything that you would put in Mexican food, just put it on top of that soup and you will be eating so good that night. So first we're going to start out by sauteing a ½ pound of thick cut bacon in the Instant Pot and then taking that out after it has crisped up. I've already done that here. And then I leave about 2 tablespoons of the bacon grease inside the pan. Next we're gonna add 1 chopped onion, and I just use pre-chopped onion, right in there with all of that bacon grease. And then we're gonna do 1 pound of Jimmy Dean sausage. I find that the Jimmy Dean brand is actually like worth splurging on. I don't really like using store brand sausage. This one just tastes really good. And since it's the main protein, I definitely recommend just spending a little bit extra to get the higher quality sausage. To the sausage and the onions, I'm adding 2 tablespoons of minced garlic. And then to this 1 teaspoon of salt, ½ a teaspoon of pepper, and ½ a teaspoon of crushed red pepper flakes. If you don't like it spicy, then just do just a pinch of the red pepper flakes. You still want that flavor. And then we're gonna use that little chopper masher thing that I bought on that Amazon video I did earlier this summer. And we want to just chop this all up. Try and lift up some of that fond on the bottom of the pot from the bacon. All those browned bits, that's all flavor that we want to suck off the bottom of the pot and scrape off. The meat and the onions are looking good. They don't have to be like 100% done, just like 90% done, because it's all gonna cook. Okay, to this, we are going to add 1 cup of chicken broth. So I have my chicken broth here. It's just 6 cups of water with 6 teaspoons of better than bouillon. I like to just do like 1 cup right at the beginning and then deglaze the pot. So the pot is still on saute mode. I'm just taking my ThermoWorks spatula, my silicone spatula, it's the best one out there, and just scrape everything off the bottom of the pot. We really want to make sure that all that flavor is lifted off the pot. So 1, we get that flavor and it tastes good. 2nd, because we don't want it to burn and get the burn notice. All right, looks good. Okay, so to this we are going to add 5 potatoes. I think this is about 5 cups. 5 or 6 potatoes. I find 1 regular, like small to medium potato is usually about 1 cup. So I cut these up into little triangles like you can see here. It's very simple. Now we're gonna add the rest of our chicken broth. If you'd like to do a lower carb option, you can do cauliflower in place of the potatoes. If you like more meat, you can add an additional pound of sausage. I usually like to do 2 more cups of liquid when I do that. And that's it. I do not like to pressure cook with the crispy bacon in there because I feel like it kind of gets soggy. So I'm just going to cook this for 1 minute on high pressure. The reason it's only 1 minute is because everything else is cooked besides the potatoes, and these potatoes are super tiny. We don't want to make mashed potatoes, so we just want to cook these through. It only takes 1 minute. So we're gonna put the lid on and pressure cook for 1 minute. The zuppa toscana is done. It only cooked for 1 minute, and this is what it looks like. So you'll see when you take off the lid, there's kind of a red film on there. That's just some fat. If you use spicy sausage, this will be really red. So if you don't like it, you can just use a skimmer and just take off some of that fat off the top. If it doesn't bother you, which it doesn't really bother me, you can just leave it. So to this, we are going to now add 1 bunch of kale that we chiffonaded. And I like to kind of massage it with my fingers or like with my hands a little bit, just to tenderize the kale. So we are going to add 1 bunch, or however much you want. If you don't like that much kale, don't put in that much kale. But we are just going to let this wilt for just a second, so I kind of press it down. We don't want to crush up those beautiful potatoes, so you want to be really gentle. And you can see some of the potatoes have broken, and then that skin on the potato turns into a little ribbon. It's really pretty, just swimming throughout the soup. And that kale only takes about 1 or 2 minutes to really wilt down. And then we'll add the rest of our bacon. Or if you want to save some for the top, you can always do that as well. And then the last ingredient, which is the best, is just 1 cup of heavy cream. If you don't want to do heavy cream, you don't have to. It's really good without the cream, but we really like the cream. Now mix that in. And this is a showstopper. It's delicious. You can add a little bit of extra salt and pepper or crushed red pepper flakes if you like, but we love it just like this. Enjoy. We're going to start off with 3 slices of thick cut bacon, and I've already gone ahead and crisped that and then leave that in the pot. To this, we are going to add half of an onion. About 1 cup of diced celery. 5 cups of red potatoes, and I just cut them up into little tiny chunks like that. If you don't want to cut the red potatoes, you can also use the hash brown potatoes, but I just really like the color of the potatoes in this soup. I think it looks really pretty. And just like the other soup, usually 1 red potato is about 1 cup. If they're a little bit smaller, they might be a little bit less than a cup. Wow, it already smells good. All right, to that we're gonna add 1 tablespoon of minced garlic, 3 teaspoons of salt, 3/4 of a teaspoon of thyme, and 3/4 of a teaspoon of pepper. I'm just gonna dump all of that in there. And then I like to let this saute for just a couple minutes to kind of embed all that bacony goodness into the vegetables. To the vegetable mixture, we are going to deglaze the pot with 3 tablespoons of white cooking wine. This really gives the soup like a really yummy flavor. And then 1.5 cups of chicken broth. So I just use the 1.5 cups of hot water and 1.5 teaspoons of Better Than Bouillon. Then I'm going to take the clam juice out of 2 cans of clams. So here I have a 10-ounce can, and this one is a 6.5-ounce can of clams. I just drained these, so I strained the juice, and I'm going to use that juice. Make sure you keep the clams because we're going to add those later. So to this, we are going to add the clam juice. This is about 1.25 cup. Make sure you strain it, otherwise you might get some like little piece of shell in there. Don't want that. And that's it. Make sure you scrape the bottom of the pot to deglaze it. We don't want it to burn. Gotta lift up all that bacon flavor. I also forgot just to add 1 bay leaf in there, and then you can pressure cook. And now we're going to let this cook for 2 minutes on high pressure with a quick release. All of these recipes are so quick and easy. I really love that. Soup is done. Oh my, and it smells delicious. All right, first thing I'm going to do is just fish out that bay leaf because we don't eat bay leaves. We'll just take that out, throw that away. And then we're going to add the clams from the 10-ounce can and the 6.5-ounce can. I made sure to rinse them because we don't want any little questionable pieces or any little shells. So we're going to add that and just let them kind of warm through. And you can also add the bacon now, or you can add it in, on the top. Like I said, I like to do both. I usually make extra bacon actually for this recipe. Okay, this looks great. I'm going to turn it back on saute mode for just a second, and then we are going to thicken this soup using 3 cups of heavy cream mixed with 6 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. All I do is I take the flour and I whisk it into the heavy cream, and it becomes just kind of like a roux paste, and it's really nice. So we've got our 3 cups of heavy cream mixed with 6 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. Just gonna add that right into the soup. Okay, and then I just bring this to a boil, and then that will thicken it up really nicely. It's fantastic. I like to serve clam chowder in a sourdough bread bowl or with really crusty classic French bread. It's amazing. Okay, and there you go. Enjoy. First, take 1 ounce of dried wood ear mushroom and reconstitute it in 2 cups of warm water. We just want it to kind of rehydrate and get nice and big and squishy all over again. And usually I would do this I would just throw the dried stuff into the Instant Pot, but this one needs to reconstitute a little bit more, and we have to kind of rinse it off. So that's why we're going to do it separate. We don't want any dirt or grit in our soup. Next, we're going to marinate the chicken. So first, take 1 large chicken breast and mince it into really fine pieces. We want them really small, not like paste obviously, but just little tiny bits that are going to float in through the soup. To this, we're going to add 1 tablespoon of cornstarch, 1 tablespoon of meating, or you can just use like a little bit of sugar water if you want, or omit if you don't have it, 1 tablespoon of soy sauce, and 1/2 teaspoon of white pepper. Now just mix that up until it's nice and covered, and then set aside while we prepare our vegetables. Wash and slice all your other vegetables, and then we are going to just dump everything in the Instant Pot. It's so nice. It's like seriously the easiest soup ever. First, we're going to add in our sliced and cleaned wood ear mushrooms. If you can't find these, just find them on Amazon, or you can find them in an Asian grocery store. After the wood ear mushrooms, do 1 cup of sliced shiitake mushrooms, 1 cup of sliced carrots, 1 stalk of finely diced green onions, 1 cup of finely sliced bamboo shoots, and I like to get the baby ones, the baby young bamboo shoots. They're just way more tender. And lastly, 7 ounces or 1 package of sliced enoki mushrooms. Next, add on the marinated chicken that we had from before, 1.5 tablespoons of minced garlic, 2 teaspoons of freshly grated ginger, and 6 cups of chicken broth. Now give that a stir, and then we're gonna put the lid on the Instant Pot, turn the knob to sealing, and cook on manual high pressure for 5 minutes. Hot and sour soup has 2 parts, right? The hot and the sour. So the hot actually isn't like a spicy heat, it actually comes from white pepper. So you need to have white pepper for this recipe. And then the sour comes from the vinegar in the soup. So hot and sour, you have to have white pepper and vinegar in order to do this. So while the soup is cooking, we are going to mix together in a separate bowl, 1/2 cup of soy sauce, 1/4 cup of cornstarch, 1/2 cup of white vinegar, 1 teaspoon of sugar, and 2 teaspoons of white pepper. Just whisk that up until the cornstarch is completely dissolved. Now that the soup is done, let's do a quick release and then open the lid. And we want to bring this up to a boil. So turn the Instant Pot to high saute and bring the soup back up to a boil. Since it's already so hot, this shouldn't take very long. We want to make sure it's completely boiling. So then when we pour in that cornstarch slurry, the soup will thicken really nicely. So while stirring the soup, just pour in that cornstarch slurry right into the soup until it's completely incorporated. Then turn off the Instant Pot. Using the same cup that you had the cornstarch slurry in, crack 2 eggs and beat them up really well. Without stirring the soup, just drizzle in those eggs ever so gently in long, nice threads. Don't stir, otherwise it will just get cloudy. We want those long, beautiful ribbons of egg floating throughout the soup. So just pour them in a circular motion and make sure the heat is turned off. After the eggs, add 1/2 block or about 9.5 ounces of sliced tofu right in. It just needs to warm up a little bit, so we don't need to cook it, and make sure it doesn't fall apart or anything. Don't stir too crazy. And then we're just going to fold everything together. So take your spoon and go to one side of the Instant Pot and just kind of pull the eggs towards the center, and do that around the edges a couple times until it's all incorporated. Lastly, add 3 tablespoons of sesame oil right into the pot, and then you are ready to eat. I like serving each individual bowl with a little bit of extra white pepper and sesame oil and some green onion to garnish, and it is the most delicious, hearty, warm, comforting bowl of hot and sour soup you have ever had. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this one, make sure you watch this one. It's 4 fast and easy potato soup recipes, or this one is 4 fast and easy chicken and rice recipes, all in the Instant Pot. Okay, we'll see you next time. Bye.